Why a sudden big bang? Of what? What was the motivating factor behind it? Science speaks about electromagnetism, but cannot say from whence come such energies which appear and disappear. Where do they go? Why do they come back? From the human perspective, there appears to be no intelligible activity within or behind its work. Science says that electromagnetism just is a simple fact of existence, yet it produces highly purposeful and intelligent work in the form of millions of billions of substances of which your universe is made. How does this happen? There is nothing that electromagnetism has brought into visible being which the human mind can deem to be lacking purpose or meaning. Science ignores this most basic and vital level of creation. Without an answer to this question as to why everything which has been brought into visible manifestation by the activity of the twin energies of electromagnetism is invariably purposeful, successful, and rational, nothing of any value in the search for your origins will be discovered. Until science can probe and discover the reality of the space in which electrical particles of visible being are supported, science will remain forever behind locked doors of materialism. It will be barred to eternal truth and universal wisdom and imprisoned within the bondage of reason alone, reason which is solely the product of the finite activity of brain cells. It is to the true nature of the space I intend to introduce you. But before proceeding to this, I must first bring many highly pertinent questions to your attention. Down the ages, much of the work produced by electromagnetism has appeared to the mind, vision, and touch of living entities as being solid, unchangeably durable. Metals, wood, rocks, living entities were all believed to be composed of solid, inanimate, or living matter. With such a belief in a solid universe, it is only natural that the mystical prophets of old should have envisioned a mighty individual possessing enormous powers in creating all the solid substances of the universe. In visualizing such a mighty individual, it was only natural that they should perceive a kingly figure of universal control, possessing a retributive nature when confronted with the behavior of mankind which created a turbulent society. Neither prophets of old nor science of today has been near to the truth of existence. Both have completely missed the truth. Science says that life began when, in some unexplained way, a correct combination of chemical reactions produced a molecule capable of making copies of itself by triggering further chemical reactions. Such a description of the enormous and teeming complexity and power of the life force as being discernible because it is capable of replicating itself reveals the basic impoverishment of scientific perception and thought which produced such a theory. Furthermore, the suggestion that such a combination of inanimate chemicals can get together in a specific way, accidentally, to produce such an astounding result of self-replication remains unquestioned scientifically. This is because the finite human mind, even though scientific, cannot deal with such a strange eventuality of uninitiated self-replication. It is too suggestive of a magical occurrence, of some intervention from an unimaginable source which scientific men dare not contemplate for fear of ridicule. This sheep-like acquiescence is considered more scientific than producing inspired theories blocked by the materialistic laws science has established for itself. This block to future scientific progress will prevent science properly investigating the realm of mind and spirit until some enlightened scientist defies convention and dares to cross the borderline between the seen and the unseen. Prophets of old, if presented with the theory of molecular self-replication, would have no difficulty with such a magical occurrence and would say that God made the chemical combinations and imbued them with life. That would not be the right explanation either. It is this old religious concept of a God on high, creating from afar, which is blocking the man of science from moving forward to more spiritually aware reflections. Therefore, despite science's seeming emancipation from age-old doctrines, it is still as mentally bound and hindered by fears of ancient shibboleths as in the 19th century. It adopts its ridiculous theories because it has not yet perceived the reality of our source of being behind and within the living molecule. Continuing its story of creation, science states that after the self-manufacture of living molecules capable of replicating themselves, they formed themselves into a living cell, so small it cannot be seen by the naked eye, which became the building block for all the multiplexity of living organisms, including plants, insects, reptiles, birds, animals, and man himself. Therefore, all living things have a common ancestor, the first living molecule. Science cannot explain why the self-replicating molecules combine themselves into a living cell. It remains a mystery to science to this day. The living cell, your science tells you, is endlessly repeated in a billion differing forms. It is the building block of the visible universe. How can this be? What impulse motivates such replication? Science cannot say. Entrenched in its own blindness, it has dragged people down into materialistic blindness with it. And now the first living cell deserves the undivided attention of anyone seriously seeking the spiritual dimension and the mainspring of existence, because the first living molecule and the first living cell are the very first evidence of some intelligent activity within matter, within the universe. The foremost feature displaying sense and sensibility is the function of the membrane, which covers the cell, giving it protection and individuality. Think about this miraculous phenomenon. The cell takes in, from the environment, only selected nourishment through the membrane. Not only does the cell take in the right nutrition, but, having utilized the nutrition, the cell rids itself of the waste through the permeable membrane. You should ask yourself how the purely physical membrane of the cell, invisible to your eye, can distinguish and select the correct nourishment to enhance its well-being, and then exercise sufficient discernment to rid itself of unwanted, toxic matter. Do you not see a high degree of purposefulness within all this activity, and can you believe that such purposefulness is accidental? And is not purpose the very hallmark of intelligence? Not only this, the membrane of the cell continues to do this work of selection of nutrition and discarding of waste in a billion different circumstances and conditions relating to survival within different species and differing environments. Is this not evidence of purposefulness displayed within every single action of every single species, be it insects, plants, reptiles, birds, animals, and human beings? Could you not describe the universe as being the consistent and undeviating impulse of purposefulness made visible within the realm of visible matter? Is the spirit of purposefulness a physical element or one of consciousness? And if you can accept that purposefulness is an undeniable creative impulse behind existence, then you can move on to the next perception of your universe as being the visible manifestation of an intelligent appraisal of cause and effect, clearly evident within living matter. For, if the living cell can select the right nourishment and also provide for the elimination of toxic waste, this simple activity displays an awareness of the need for digestion and also foresees the resultant buildup of toxic waste and the need for the elimination of such waste to ensure the continued health of the cell. Is this not a clear indication of an intelligent appraisal of cause and effect? Furthermore, science says that the cell contains a nucleus which might be likened to the brain of a human being, since it conveys messages and its most important function is the storage of information, the library which contains not just the details relating to one cell, but of the whole body in which it resides. In fact, on investigation by science, it would appear that the cell itself is a system of chemical messages carried out in a purposeful, intelligent, and intelligible way. How could this happen if the origins of the cell's molecules were only inanimate chemical elements? Would you dispute that behind every messenger with a message to convey, there is intelligent thought or consciousness? And behold how accurate are the messages transferred from cell to cell to ensure the accurate replication of certain species for millions of years. At what point in creation, then, did consciousness creep into living organisms, come into the field of unconscious inanimate matter? Without inherent consciousness, how can so much informed and informing activity take place in a cell invisible to the living eye? Is not such activity the product of consciousness, awareness, proving the presence of intelligent life in its lowest denominator? Furthermore, a single living cell, in the form of a bacterium, can move about on its own and live its own specialized, frequently exciting life within the environment, or as a virus doing its deadly specialized work of attacking specific targets within living organisms. Alternatively, the cell may be fixed within an organism, carrying out its own highly important work of construction and maintenance of some part of the organism. Such work produces living material exactly suited and necessary to the living organ on which it works, be it parts of the human body or of animal life or plant, such as the human toes and spleen, or animal fur and tusks, or fish scales and feathers of birds, or bark of tree and foliage on branches, or petals and stalk of flowers, or antennae of butterflies and their gauzy wings, the reptilian skin of crocodiles and their teeth, the eyes of squid and their skins, which change color according to the need of camouflage. Each of these completely diverse and seemingly unrelated physical phenomena are created by the individual specialized work of billions and billions and billions of identical living cells. On contemplating the magnitude and diversity of the work accomplished by a simple living cell invisible to the naked eye, can you believe in a mechanistic universe? It would be possible to do so if matter produced by such cells was illogical, offering no plausible purpose behind or the reason for its existence, devoid of personal consciousness. But this is not so. These identical living cells work together in harmony within man or beast to make a liver with its multiple duties within the body, to create an intricate eye having its own specific purposes of putting the entity into direct and intelligent touch with its environment, incorporating the assistance of the brain or strong bones, expressly and intricately designed in conjunction with tendons and muscles, to unite with others in such convenient ways as to enable full and supple movement of the entity. Furthermore, the cells never intrude on each other's work. When creating a kidney, they do not suddenly make an ear. When creating hair, they do not suddenly launch into making skin. No, cells create the scalp, and the self-same cells create the hair. The only difference between skin and hair cells is the work they do, second by second, through a lifetime. Why? What is the motivating and inspiring factor? Accident? What organizing intelligence set the entire process of creation in motion from the most fundamental level of the formation of simple elements out of the free electrical particles within space, the combining of elements to form chemicals, the correct combination of specific chemicals to form a living molecule, the correct combination of living molecules to make a living cell, which can take in nutrition, excrete waste, build according to clear-cut specification, move about, and sustain this enormous edifice of creation consistently through billions of years. Not only this, but what is the motivating force which has designed and successfully evolved within living systems and entities billions and billions of different ways in which to fertilize seeds of every kind, whether they be those of plants, insects, reptiles, birds, animals, or human beings, evolving for each an intelligent system of procreation suited to climactic conditions, the production of vegetation in the environment, in order to ensure survival. Is not survival also evidence of intelligent, purposeful activity? And having accomplished this great feat of creativity, should you not question how it is that every living species has its own individualistic way of rearing its young and protecting it as far as possible until the young are capable of survival on their own? Is this not love for creation active in its highest form? You cannot move on from this analysis of what the human intelligence has to say about the origins of life and creativity without mentioning the all-important molecule DNA, which are said to carry the plan for the whole organism, plant or baby. Furthermore, these DNA molecules give the instructions to the cells, informing them that they should build according to the chromosomes deposited by the seed. Yes, indeed, in place of intelligence, science has given you the DNA molecules as your source of existence, your supreme leader, your director of creation upon which materialistic, flimsy cells, the whole of creation, must depend for its survival. Behold the glorious DNA, Lord of your creation. From whence did the DNA cells draw their intelligent directional powers? Science is quite satisfied now that it has been able to satisfactorily explain why the various species of every kind replicate themselves so accurately and consistently. Science would have you believe that you live in a purely mechanistic universe, that the phenomenon of evolution arises out of chance mutations and the survival of the fittest. If you study the various organisms of creation, the multifold and differing activities of related species, can you truly believe in such an unlikely materialistic concept? It has been no mere coincidence that today, to enable you to discover the vast intelligence behind creation, you have numerous creative people who embark on difficult journeys to explore, determine, and photograph the habitats and habits of wild creatures and plants. You are entertained and instructed by a feast of facts and photographs of the wonders of your universe. In my time on earth, I had no such marvels to refer to in order to teach the Jews the universal truth of existence. I only had domestic animals and birds to use as examples of the marvelous inventiveness and intelligence and awareness apparent in every living thing. Nowhere has it been written in the Gospels that I referred to a high and mighty Jehovah as Creator, as was customary with the Jewish leaders. No, I turned to the countryside, the flowers and birds, and tried to show my fellow countrymen that they were surrounded by a marvelous and miraculous creation. 2,000 years ago in your dimension, we lacked your modern scientific background to be able to intelligently observe and explain the activity of what I termed the Father everywhere around them. To discover your true source of being, I ask you to take stock of the unimaginable and indescribable complexity and diversity of purposeful work plainly evident in penguins and pigs. Can the human mind replicate any of the most basic of activities within, say, the digestive system, which swiftly summons up the requisite enzymes and hormones necessary for digestion? How dare the finite mind, which is incapable of perceiving clearly the true creative process governed by instinctual knowledge, presume to state unequivocally, defying contradiction, that it understands the true origins of creation and the forces out of which creation took form? What arrogance! These men can only think according to what their eyes tell them. I view the present scientific ignorance with loving compassion, a degree of amusement, and a great all-consuming passion to puncture their pride. For, until someone can penetrate their self-satisfaction and position of infallibility, a true mating of eternal verities and human scientific knowledge can never take place. But it must take place, otherwise human spiritual evolution will remain at a standstill. The scientific mind is too full of finitely devised book lore, accepted formulas and equations, and the need for their fellows' approval to permit mystical penetration by higher intelligences. On my behalf, I ask readers of these letters to form an association to challenge science and ask, at what point in the evolution of the material world is consciousness first discernible? I repeat, and mean what I say. Ask the scientist at what point in the evolution of the world is consciousness first discernible? In the living cell? If in the living cell, ask whether it was discernible in the living molecules which combine to make a cell and encase itself in such an intelligently designed membrane, permitting the intake of selected food and excretion of toxic waste. How does it recognize toxic waste? And having reached such a possibility, should you not go further and ask from whence comes electromagnetism? What is the reality of electricity more than streaks of fierce light now described by science as photons and electrons? And what is the reality of magnetism more than twofold energies of bonding and rejection, energy impulses which have brought stability and order into chaos? Ask science, from whence comes electromagnetism, which is responsible for the most basic steps in the creation of an ordered and orderly universe, of an unimaginable complexity and diversity.